I am here today with a real inspiration on so many levels. This woman inspires me so much. First of all, when I came across her account on Instagram, she has a beautiful shoe brand that all of the ladies are going to want to be wearing. But when I dove into even more of who she is, I realized, oh my goodness, I am literally learning about a woman who has gone through literally hell and back. And what I mean by that is you may have seen her on Yes to the Dress. She has been known as a top designer in the world, and she literally got her name taken away from her at one point. And we're going to dive all into that here today. Either way, I am so excited and honored to have Cheval here with me in the studio. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my goodness. I am so excited to hear your story.
It's a long one.
We need to hear it. We need to hear it. Like, first of all, how did you get into being an entrepreneur? You've been in for over a decade, I think.
Yes, I have been in the wedding industry for a very long time. Straight out of college, I knew that was what I wanted to do. And I had the pleasure of working at a company called Priscilla of Boston years ago. And then I signed an employment contract when I was just 25 years old, working for a company in which I gave rights for my name to be registered as a trademark for a bridal collection that I was designing.
Okay.
And that led to almost a 10-year period of, building a brand and showing up. And there's some really wonderful takeaways and treasured moments that I've just, it's made me who I am in a lot of ways. But towards the end of my contract, I was hoping to kind of negotiate on new terms.
Right.
And, long story short, I wound up in a federal court. I was sued by my former employer. And since then, I have lost the right or ability to use my own birth name in any business or commerce, or even to publicly identify myself on social media. And I'm no longer receiving commission for any of the dresses that are still being sold. And I'm in a very, very litigious, district court battle in a district court. And I've spent 2 years doing that. And I now am under a 5-year provision where I cannot identify to the trade in which my former employer manufactures and sells as a designer, whether or not I use my name. So this new provision, which was brought on a few days before my contract actually expired, it is particularly devastating because it has a lot to do with me not being able to utilize what I would consider my gift and something I've nurtured, not just from a employment situation, but my whole life and my career and my education.
Yeah.
Everything has been about wanting to make women feel beautiful via dress design.
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge you for sharing all of this. And, I always say things are happening for you and not to you. And I know that someday that will all make sense to you, even if it's starting to right now. But what I want to know is how the heck did you get into this mess? And what I mean by that is, like, here's the thing, and everyone watching this, listening, they aspire to do what you've done and what you continue to do. They want to build brands. They want to make something out of nothing. They want to make a difference. And everyone's trying to do the best they can. And the thing, when I was reading your story, I started to get angry, because I'm like, here's this creative woman who has put her heart and soul into her work. She built an Instagram account, over 1 million+ followers, TikTok, all the places. You did all this. And then now it's like, wait, somebody just takes it from you? Like, I'm trying to comprehend it. Like, how did that happen? Right? Because, how did that happen? And what can normal people that are building stuff do to protect themselves?
definitely comes down to that latter part you just said is, when you're going into a business relationship or you're going in to sign a contract, it's so important to have your interests be a priority. And for me, the short answer is that I signed an employment agreement when I was 25 years old, and I did it without a lawyer. And years later, that contract was interpreted in ways that I never thought imaginable. And I think it's difficult when so much of the legal process, in my experience, has not been cut and dry. It's not been, this is exactly what you can and can't do, and when you're operating within a contract and things seem to be going well, and then all of a sudden it feels different, and like your experience isn't matched by what's happening in a legal case, it can be very frightening. So my advice, and now I actually say this as a story that has become a beware for young designers and artists, and even women especially, who sometimes feel like they can't be combative or they can't push back on things.
Right.
And that's something I definitely identified with when I was 25 years old. I felt like, I'm not sure what kind of leverage I have here. I know I'm very talented in my design skills, and I know I have a lot to bring to the table, but I think I was so hyper-focused on proving myself and so eager for this opportunity, which seemed like, my dream.
Totally.
That, I felt very pressured in that sense. And now, with everything that's gone on, I have realized that, all of your power and your control is in your response to things, and it's always your next step or your next collection, that is really the focus for me. And that's helped change my perspective on what's gone down, because it's hard to digest for a lot of people. They're like, how does this happen? And it's like, it can happen.
Yeah.
And it can happen from a contract, or by the way someone is interpreting that contract. And I think what is the true blessing in all of this is that a lot of the things I clung to in getting ahead and trying to progress have been purpose driven and about like what I want to identify as. So it's given me an opportunity to do that and essentially reinventing myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Reinventing yourself, changing your name, changing your brand, changing what you design, absolutely everything. Okay. So when you're in the come up of building this other brand, because clearly nobody goes after someone, wants their personal identity, all the things that has happened, right? Unless you're wildly talented.
It's really sweet.
I mean, for real. Like, if you were just like, they'd be like, okay, see ya, not signing the contract, not upping, whatever. Like, that's just how it would go. Let's just be real. You were an asset, and so what did that look like? How many years was that? Like when you were on, Say Yes to the Dress, and what did that look like in your career? Was it like a decade? What was the time frame? Were you just like crushing it, blowing up this brand? Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to define because I don't believe like the overnight thing, or the virality thing really happens and has staying power, maybe in a very rare occasion. But for me, I definitely signed an employment agreement, and I signed on to be a head designer. I didn't really necessarily sign on for all these other things that became a part of the growth in that brand.
Right.
And I definitely attribute a lot of it to me being a very sentimental person. I love to bring joy to women, and I love to have this connection and this camaraderie and this friendship, especially through my design work, because it's how I communicate, it's how I relate to people. And so I've always believed in kind of going that extra step, whether it includes showing up, on a TV show like Say Yes to the Dress and being fully present for so many beautiful moments like that, or it's getting into my DMs and answering as many messages as I possibly can.
Totally.
Because on the other end of that is my muse. It's the person that's keeping me there every day and showing up and reassuring me. I am a validation person, and I'm a words of affirmation type.
Me
and
too.
I love that exchange.
Yeah.
And so I show up for it as much as I can. And I think that, which is something you can't really package and say, like, this is part of your,
Right.
That helped, I think, a lot in the chemistry and the rarity of a brand and of a growth that happened. And like, I think timing is so important in life with the way things happen. And like, even now with the way social media is, you would take a completely different approach starting now versus when I did.
Yeah.
And, when I signed my contract, social media wasn't in it. It wasn't factored in. It wasn't even written anywhere in the contract. And, now you couldn't imagine signing a contract that wouldn't have some provisions or clear outlines on what this means for you versus a corporation.
Yeah.
And, for me, that was always my personal account. It was like that for me, that's how I saw it. And that's what I put into it every day, the unseen hours, and all that stuff.
Yeah, because the personal account was your former name.
It was.
So you just built it by building relationships with women and just probably posted day by day your clients, things like that.
Yeah.
And then how did it turn into them getting that?
So what it kind of came down to had a lot to do with, the trademark provision, as well as what the contract said and how it was argued and interpreted. But for me, I think the hardest part was I'll never forget this day. I was in a hearing, and the TRO was granted. And I had to turn over my passwords within a 24-hour period. So for my Instagram, my TikTok, and my Pinterest at the time. And like, all I could think about was how violated I felt, because there were so many personal messages on there between like my fiance, people I had dated, girlfriends that were, just very heartfelt and personal things that you would never want anyone to have access to. And, in my experience, I was controlling and running that account. And I this wasn't something that was like a free for all. And it was never made clear to me that it was all of a sudden going to be a business asset or interpreted that way. And I couldn't change anything to the account. I couldn't do anything. I had to hand it over. And then the worst part really was that all of a sudden posts were going up to that account, and no knowledge or transparency was given to the following.
Like, hey, this isn't, your former name. Yeah.
And I can't explain the feeling I experienced, but it was just, it was a violation for sure. But for people that I cared about so much and making sure that message was authentic, and to this day, that account that they now have, control of has never addressed the following of what has actually transpired. And luckily, there's other ways to message these days. And I'm so grateful for that. But it makes my heart really hurt. And that's such a cheesy thing to say, but it's sad because it feels like the authenticity isn't there. And it's something I really treasured and wanted to protect. And all of a sudden I couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So that was really tough.
Oh my goodness. I mean, last night I trained a group of entrepreneurs on branding and personal branding. And I have built my personal brand since I was 23, so over a decade. And it's been a mix of authority, giving tips on business, obviously all the wisdom, but also it's glimpses of my real intimate life, things I go through. And I truly believe that's how I've built my brand to where it is today. But it's over a long period of time. And when you're talking about talking to her, talking to that person, that's what I do. That's when I turn on the camera, I'm talking to her. It drives you and motivates you so much. So I understand completely. I mean, to even think of if It Factor, It's Emily was gone, I'm like, what would I do? Literally when I was learning about you, I was like, what would I do? So you're in this process. And when was this just went?
Yeah. The lawsuit landed on my lap in December of 2020, December 14th. the hearing, I believe, was the 16th. It was like granted like that, like 2 days later. So preparation time, you can imagine I was like, I was in active litigation still working for this at my former employer when this happened. So there was a part of me that just felt so crushed and blindsided, of course. But I was really frightened at first. I've never been in a lawsuit.
Oh yeah.
I've gone through divorce, but I got very lucky in that sense of how it ended.
Yeah.
But I couldn't believe it. And so I just felt really rushed. And then at the time, the litigator I had got COVID, and then all of a sudden we're in this hearing, and then I just had to turn it over. So it was within a 3-day period. And after the TRO was granted, I resigned the next day. Like it was the emotions of it were really unique because I had been already trying to negotiate a future for like almost a year and a half.
Yeah.
And that experience for me was extremely traumatizing because I didn't feel like I was being seen as a respectable businesswoman. I felt like the delta was so wide for a reason I never understood. But I was very hopeful that like there is a way to make secure the future and have everyone feel excited about it. And then when this happened, it was kind of closure for me because I was definitive in that I knew I would never have a future with a company that would be willing to do business like that.
Right.
So it was kind of a relief because I was like, okay, well I know exactly what I need to do. So that not a lot of people get that kind of closure.
Yeah.
But then since then, of course, in this battle, it's gotten very convoluted and there's so many facets, and not being able to use my name was, I just kind of had this, what is going on here? Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But then the social media was really tough because this was a relationship now that I felt like was being interfered with in a way. And then of all things, the worst was actually a few days before my contract was up. And I had every intention of going back into bridal just under a different name.
Yep.
And that was my impression. And when I was told that I would have to wait 5 more years to be able to do what I believe I know I can do very well, and it feels like my purpose, that was the gut punch of all punches, like from losing, rights to use my name publicly to the social media. Okay, I can rebuild that.
Yeah.
I can come up with a new name and be excited about it. But then the purpose part was like, that was the real
major.
Yeah. But it gives you that perspective of like, how does one identify and how do you find your purpose in life? And for me, it's creative. It's always been, it's the way I communicate with people.
Oh, wow.
And then I was like, okay.
So did you have like this moment, and we're going to talk about your new brand that is so exciting. But how did you, like, what did that look like? I mean, I know so many people listening, watching, like we've had moments of like, is this real? Is this really happening? I mean, both of us have been through, divorces. That's a lot. People have lost things, lost people, lost companies. Like what, like, were you in Palm Beach where you live? Were you in Florida? Were you like, what am I going to do? Did you sit for days? Did you take a hiatus and go to the beach and meditate and say, okay, give me an answer? Or has this been just this ongoing thing where you're like, maybe I'll do shoes?
Yeah. Taking back to the time when the lawsuit was just dropped and it was fully present there, I was at my family house. And so I was very comforted because I felt protected and safe. I was within my family walls, and it was during COVID, so I couldn't have been in a better place to digest something like this because, I think when traumatizing things happen or you're faced with adversity, you tend to look to things that bring you comfort, and like security and safety. And I was with my fiance, I was with my family, I had my health, I wasn't sick with COVID. I started to really put things in perspective of like, what are the basic things? Okay, I have these basic things.
Wow, yeah.
And I am a very privileged and fortunate person, and there will be a way to get through this. It's hope.
Yes.
And it's also a responsible optimism because I would say that I am somebody that is always like sunny side up, and like be positive, but can't just be positive, positive, positive. You know, like you do need to grieve. And
Yeah.
I had some time to do that. I'm a very physical healer, I would say.
Yeah.
Like I go out for walks, I work out,
Yeah.
you know, I make sure that I can wind down and relax, whether that's a movie, a glass of wine, time with my fiance, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I do indulge in those things.
Right.
Because, you know, I always say like, no one's going to give you permission to live your life and
Right.
enjoy yourself.
Exactly.
And when you're going through something traumatic, you almost feel like you have to be sad, you know, or you have to be a certain way for it to register. And people process grief differently.
Totally.
And, you know, so for me, I was like, let's focus on some basic things that are very important to life. And that was really helpful. And then, you know, I kind of was in this waiting period because it was almost 2 years.
In COVID.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and I'm such an outward expresser,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
And so for me, I was like, who am I when I'm like not?
Yeah. And we're
in this
already going
expression.
through a pandemic.
Yeah.
Where even same with me, like I was used to flying, traveling, doing all things. And I'm like, who am I?
Who am
Like
I?
in a bathrobe, I can only do so many face masks. Okay.
Exactly.
Like, what's happening?
Interesting. What's my name?
Yeah. Yeah. So then were you just like, I'm gonna do this new brand? Like, how did that come about?
I definitely was living on the hope, you know, and like, it's not always going to be like this. And it's kind of like the idea of being comfortable in the discomfort, in that, like, you know, this is really hard to deal with.
Yeah.
But it's not going to always be like that. And so like that idea of like tolerance and process was good for me. But I really I'm going to get back and do what I know I'm supposed to do in just 2 years, you know, because my contract was ending in August of 2022. That was the end date. And this happened December of 2020. So I was like, you know, almost 2 years, I can do this, you know, and I can stay creative every day. I can be there for my fiance who's been there for me so much, you know, so it's like, I tried to make a good point of it. And when I was told just a few days before August that I wouldn't be able to go back into bridal and identify as a designer in that way, that's when I was really like, okay, it's time to put everything that I learned over the past 2 years to the test. What should I do now? You know, like,
wow,
life's giving you lemons.
Okay, so you like thought like, oh, I'm just gonna go on and do bridal in my own way. Yeah.
And I'll go by a different name.
Yeah.
You know, and then all of a sudden couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And I always say this, like saying it's like, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. But it's like, what if life gives you lemons and you're not allowed to make lemonade?
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of how I was like, interesting. I'm going to turn this lemon into a shoe.
Yeah.
But yeah, shoes actually just came about because, I mean, I really dabbled in the idea of like, how can I express myself? How can I somewhat repackage the skill set that I have? And the thing that really drew me to shoes, one, it's a product that carries you places. You know, it's something that actually manifests the way you walk and talk. And
yes,
I like this empowerment idea of it. But I also felt like some of my skill was transferable in how I interpret things and sketch and build molds and make it something come to life.
Yeah.
But then there was also this sentimentalism behind it, because that's, I think, something that brought me so much joy in designing wedding dresses is like, you know, it's this emotional connection.
Totally.
And so I felt like I could be a little emotional with shoes. And I was like, I love this.
Yeah. It's a piece of art.
Yeah. And it's like manifesting your destiny, moving on, walking against the wind, you know, and all that stuff. So I was like, okay, I can do this. But I have so much to learn, let me tell you. I mean, like, you know, I have so much respect for the space itself because there's great talent there already. And that's something that I think detours a lot of entrepreneurs and designers is like, how am I going to stand out here? There's so many great players already there. But you know, the baby steps aren't so baby. You have to just do it one little day at a time, stay focused on it, you know, and learn as you go, you know, wing it like your eyeliner.
Well, you're winging it like your eyeliner straight up good. Yeah. Cause some days my eyeliner is like, woo. And then other days I'm like,
never even.
We did good today. Right. But these shoes, like they are pieces of art. They're a whole vibe. They are a whole vibe. Okay. Let me tell you right now, everybody is going to want these, whether it's the sneaker edition, the heels, the flats. So, you know, when designing the shoes and you know, cultivating this new brand, like how long has that been? She has a pop-up right now in New York, but also like I know I have worldwide people, like obviously you know, ship to us, like, come on, let's go. But how did this come about? Like knowing how to put this together, like, you know, kind of dive into that a little bit.
The first two things I'll say is having women around me that are so ambitious and hardworking and can make up your team, like that was extremely helpful and meaningful for me. And they're specialized, you know, so that we could all focus in our little areas and build this. You know, it wasn't just me, you know, in that sense. And that helped me get off the ground really quickly. And then the other, you know, category is this incredible following and audience and inspiration. This community over the years that has stuck by me through all of this, you know, that is a consistent motivator, but it also gives me a great deal of responsibility that I love. Because it's, you know, like the best part of being a woman for me is that I don't want to let other women down, you know, and it's like,
that's right.
It drives me every day to be like, I have a responsibility to show up and I can make them something else, you know, and like that's kind of where the mentality of that came from. But like the semantics behind it, when you're building a company, I think there's a lot of formula in how you do it, you know, and there were some familiarities in, you know, making the process a little more condensed, trimming the fat on things that sometimes we mull over for too long.
Yeah.
You know, and it's better to, you know, get something out there and grow as you go.
Yeah. Totally.
As opposed to feeling like, okay, everything has to be perfect.
Right.
You know, so I kind of got rid of that mindset of like, we're not going to be a perfectionist.
Yeah.
Definitely going to make some mistakes. There's going to be some issues, but it's going to be part of the learning curve in this. And it's more important to me to get something out there and feel like I'm making the connection again in a way that feels really authentic to me and grow from there.
Yeah. So when did you launch that?
We just launched a few weeks ago.
Literally.
Yeah. So, you know, the tech back and development stage, you know, was about 30 days. But I knew once I got my rhythm and I was like, I gave myself permission, okay, I'm going to get out there again. And here's what I'm going to do. I felt like I had a nice jog to it. And I stayed really consistent because one, I knew that I wanted to be eclectic and I wanted it to feel artful. So I love that compliment because I wanted it to feel like art in a way.
It is.
So that was a good motivator too, because like the collection itself is very eclectic. There's sneakers, there's flats, there's heels,
so cool.
Sky high heels, and then there's slippers. You know, there's like all that kind of stuff. And now I'm like in this process of, okay, what's working? You know, what's not working?
Yeah.
And I think also being a creative, you learn that when you do put out a collection or you put out a piece of work, and you could probably relate to this as a business person, there are a few things that really do well.
Yep.
And the rest of it, you know, doesn't do
it's
as
like,
well. You can't have like an entire.
You have your hero products.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I looked for. And that's the pressure I took off myself of like, okay, I'm not going to put out all these shoes and every single one of them is going to be a hit master. You know, like some are going to be really good and others, okay, the feedback is more nuanced. But like that's a big lesson to learn as an entrepreneur is like, you know, you have your little stars that set off. And then you know kind of which trajectory to take.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. It's like you're testing the marketplace. Yeah. And I wonder because of COVID, right? Like, is the cute sneakers doing better, or does it even matter now that like we're back into life? Are women back into being glamorous?
I think it's a little of both.
Yeah.
Which I love because it's across the spectrum in that sense. I found myself to be really attracted to the sneakers. Yeah. I'm such a heel girl, but all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I love the sparkle sneakers.
They're rad.
So I love those. But the boots, I think, are kind of becoming a little bit more of the heavy hitters because the rhinestone flair to it allows you to feel like we're doing something special today. Yes. But at the same time, I'm kind of wearing them to work, you know?
Totally.
So I don't know. I think the boot realm is a really special zone for us to deep dive.
Yeah, this should be fun. What's the website?
The website is sheischeval.com.
Okay,
and Cheval is the new name I'm going by, you know, personally, publicly, professionally. And it means horse in French. I've always identified with just the idea of running against the wind and this trailblazing,
super cool,
Wild West kind of thing.
Yes.
I love it. And I actually love that Cheval is has a masculine energy as well, which is a nice juxtaposition to what I do in like the feminine expression world.
It totally does.
So I liked that. And then I liked that it was one word because it,
yeah, it's like Beyonce.
not that I would ever compare in a million years, but it's like,
no, girl.
I love that. I love it. It's like Bowie, you've got Adele, you have Beyonce, you have these great one words.
Yeah.
So I love that. But the brand is, she is Cheval, so the idea of like, she is fierce. She is going against the grain. She is vulnerable. She is whatever she wants to be.
That is so good. It is so, so good.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Everyone needs to share this website, and it's perfect for like ourselves. Like, trust me, I want every pair, but it's also perfect for a gift because it's art. Okay. Like, for real, you guys go check out the website. Like, they just need to go look, because when I came across you, I just was like my jaw was on the ground. And then how you brand and market is so good. You're so true to who you are. It's really inspiring.
Thank you.
Have you just taken like your creative design and then you put it to social? Like, what's some tips you have in building a brand on social? And what we need to give everyone both of your accounts that they need to go follow and share. Like, I love your personal and the business one, because it's like, I want to see what she's wearing. You have to see what she's wearing. You and your adorable fiance, like all of it.
Yeah. So the two accounts, one is All That Glitters on the gram, which is like the longest handle name ever. But we just actually started it as our podcast account. My fiance and I started a podcast during COVID, and then we couldn't continue doing it with a lawsuit and everything. There's just too many things going on. But I essentially kind of took that over as my account, over the 2-year period. And so that's kind of grown into my personal account. And then I opened at She Is Cheval, which is more, product focused and but also a little bit more, I would say experiential. Yeah. And that's like one of my biggest tips for, building up a social presence, I guess.
Yeah.
It's obviously you want to be authentic and you want to do these things, but I also think everybody's doing so much on those platforms.
Totally.
It's easy to get lost in the weeds of like, how am I showing up here? It's like with the viral trends, with the TikTok dances, with
I know.
Here's my amazing recipe in no time, and like you kind of feel pulled in so many directions to like do all these things that everyone is doing. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes your message gets lost. And I relate that to being a creative in that, when something's a bestseller and it's in the marketplace, all of a sudden everyone starts doing a version of that.
Totally.
And so I remind myself that like the more nuanced you can be and the more honed into, what makes you feel excited to show up and that feels real for you. Like I found myself doing a smoothie recipe and I was like, this isn't me. I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, do I have like smoothies?
This is, honey, this is it factor. Literally, your it factor, like, is being true to the core of who you are in your essence and really what you want to bring to life. And I think we're all guilty of this. Same here. Like, I've tried to do certain things on social where I'm like, no, like, this feels so forced. Yeah. And I'm like, this is not me at all. So stop, stop with the nonsense. So I think that's such great advice, because it doesn't flow.
It doesn't. And there are things that like, okay, I can get into this, okay, I can get better at this. And like, as long as you have that spark and that interest, whereas like, if you can pay attention to when you have those moments, where you're like, this just doesn't, and that's okay. Like, it's just like trying out something new.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And I think you get caught up in that rat race of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times too, when I'm scrolling, I'm just like, what am I watching? Like a lot of this stuff, it just feels, and it's like, but it also is a reminder that like, it gives you almost more room to be really specific in how you're showing up in your message. So I would say that's probably number one. And for, 2 years almost, I really had a hard time because I was like, I'm so used to showing up a certain way. And now I can't do that but I don't want to be somebody else,
Right.
you know? And so it can be very overwhelming. And I really do empathize with people that make social media such a huge part of their business and their identity, because there's, again, this huge responsibility with it and staying up on it. And like, am I showing up enough? Am I offending people? Like, what is the experience they're having when they come to your account? But I think for me, it's always been an expression of creativity, and that's where I feel the most at home, when I feel the most comfortable. And so like I try to lean into that stuff. So shoes has given me a whole new, landscape to explore. And illustration's a big part of my life as well.
Super cool.
But of course that was an area too where I had to be very careful, because I was found in contempt of court. Sketching on social media and in videos and things like that. So, now like you'll maybe notice that my sketches really focus on the shoes. Like there's not much else going on in the sketch. For that reason, of
so you
respecting
couldn't even do like just a different dress or something?
Yeah, I just need to be extremely careful in my creative expression. And so, that just makes me want to focus more on things that I know are very safe in my interpretation. So
wow,
stuff like that. But it's like I was listening to a podcast, the other day, and sometimes when you're really restricted, it forces you to be extremely creative. Yeah. Because you like, oh my gosh, like how do I get out of this little, Whereas like when you have a free for all, sometimes it's almost easier to get distracted.
It's overwhelming. It's almost like when I call it decision fatigue. When there's too many things, it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Versus like, when I started my business, I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor, didn't have any money. And I always say to people, like, thank God I wasn't like married to someone wealthier, because I would have never, if my back wasn't against the wall, I would have never been like, here's a business plan, let me run the plan. I would have just been every which way, and so again, it's not happening to you, it's happening for you, because you took this basic concept of a shoe and you made it so freaking fabulous, sister. Like really, you turned it into art times a million. And that transcends in everything you do. Like people, once they follow you, they're going to really see that and get inspired. And it's like, you do go to your account and you just like, it makes me want to just be more feminine, but there is the side of badassery, like, because you have the mix of both, right?
Thanks.
What do you see? Like, we're coming out. I always say it's the old fighting the new, and you're coming into the new, and you've been through this thing. And I'm sure it's not like completely done yet, right? But we're going into the new season. Like, what do you see going into the new season of life? Like, you have this fiance, sounds like he's fab. Yeah.
Oh, he's amazing.
How did you meet him? And
we met through a mutual friend in New York. And I was going through my divorce when I met him. So it, was unexpected. And now we've been together 4.5 years. We've been engaged for 3.5. But he is the most positive person I've ever met in my life, which is so wonderful to have in your life every day, is this source of just real, I guess I would say it's grounded, but in the sense it's just like, we're going to keep moving forward, and like, it's very forward thinking in that sense. But the thing you brought up about the old and the new, I think it's a very interesting contrast, because so much of who we are is really defined by a lot of the things we've done. And, a lot of times change can be very scary, and this like unknown, and like living in uncertainty and all this stuff. But one of the things that I really loved about my journey is I love nostalgia, and I love the idea of these things that happened in my past that I'm so comfortable with and that have given me a sense of identity. And it's not so much glorifying the past, because I don't believe in doing that. But, the way you're carrying yourself, I think, is important, and that can help you stay grounded. But I'm such a forward person. Like, I would say I'm so much more of the new mindset of like, can you believe things that people were saying just a few years? And I'm like, I can, because that just shows how society progresses. It shows how people move forward and they get better. And there's so much good in the forward momentum of things. And you hope for that,
Yeah.
So I love the idea of like next chapter, what's new, next best step, forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to create the pressure of like, oh, you've got this, as in like minimizing your ability to just grieve and go through something.
Yeah.
But I don't love the idea of victimizing or
No.
feeling victimized by circumstances.
Yeah, I don't either.
Or like this adversity Olympics,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, you've been through so much that like it compares to this person in this way. And it's like so much of life is relative and it's all subjective.
Right.
That like you cannot really compare
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah.
So like it just comes back to like you have such a unique story, you have such a unique gift, you have your it factor. And that is something that it's a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And moving forward is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What a great mindset. You are such a champion.
Thank you.
You are an absolute
So are you.
champion.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, how can we listen to you and not be like, I will support you? Like, yeah, I see, I see so much for you. And like, you've already done so much,
Oh, that's
but it's
nice.
like your heart is in the right spot and you're such an inspiration for all women.
Thank you.
You really are. You really are.
nice.
And this is an exciting time for you. Like, let's go.
Yeah. I'm still in a huge litigation. It's
You
fine.
are.
Like,
I know, but you're going to keep going forward. And
yeah.
this story, just by you stepping forward and sharing this, like, you're going to teach so many people. You're teaching me,
Oh.
Yeah. Like what advice would you give to any business person now, knowing what you know, like if there's like a checklist and here's the thing too, and maybe you thought this too, but some people they can't fathom like getting as big as they do. You know what I mean? Like, or is the business going to go off? You just don't know. Some businesses fail, some succeed. Is there anything of like legal protection, you would say?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I am such an enthusiastic person. And a lot of times when you're carrying your heart that way, you think naively, like, oh, it's going to work out. It's going to work out, like,
Right.
and you're recklessly optimistic in that way.
Yeah.
And I would say that there is a way to still be enthusiastic and amazing and just want to go do your life, but also protect yourself. They're not mutually exclusive in that sense. So that would probably be one of the biggest lessons. I think practicing gratitude every single day, is so important to look at these basic things that you have that are such a blessing. Sunsets, amazing people you get to meet every day. Like these things that like, I don't want to say we take them for granted, but a lot of times when you're just living your life and you're going through the motions, where your focus goes, the energy flows.
Yeah.
So those things are important, I think, for an entrepreneur in choosing the right manifestation of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say sense of humor is so important.
Yeah.
Keeping things lighthearted, because when you get so caught up in the next thing and I am achievement focused. I've always been, and I've tried to kind of break that habit a little bit.
Totally.
And like,
yes,
how am I identifying what does success mean to me?
Yeah.
And like when you feel like you've lost so much, I'm like, who am I again? Like all that stuff. You look to other things in your life that bring you a sense of fulfillment and joy and that. So sense of humor has been big. Like,
yeah. No, I love that you say that because I think a lot of people listening right now that are more the power chicks or men, like we get so serious, which is great to be serious, but like have some freaking fun.
Yeah, you gotta be playful
like,
a little bit.
Even today before coming here, I was like dancing in the mirror and I had to tell him like we get so serious and it's like, no, this is fun. Like, it's like lighten up. Like I literally have to tell myself that. I'm like, lighten up, Emily, have fun.
Yes.
And that's who we're supposed to be in our true nature. You know what I mean? Like when we really let loose and
silly goose stuff.
All high frequency stuff. Oh my gosh. Well, what's the focus like today for you? Like what are you focusing on today and how can everyone support you?
Today, well, I was very excited to show up here and have this really present conversation, because presence is something that I try to focus on. When you're scrolling and you're going through the motions and you're getting your workout and you're doing all these things. And I don't meditate. I probably should, but I think for me, when I can catch myself being very present with something or someone, it's very meaningful.
Yeah.
And so like those little things during the day, I'm trying to do, which I guess that's very, how would you say? I guess it's like a very generalized statement. But other than that, more granularly, I would say, I'm very focused on, getting this brand built, and I've got these two amazing women I started it with. And they're, I get to communicate with them every day and have this nice.
Yes. Oh, I do want to, I saw on the website, like you have like a statement about your team or employees. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Basically talking about, that everybody matters, their work ethic matters. It was such a beautiful statement. I was like,
Oh, thank you. When we wanted to start this business, we kind of came up with these business principles that we wanted to manifest every day and believe in. And it's so nice to be aligned with your core values in a business. I've always thought that autonomy and acknowledgement are some of the most important things in a business, is giving people this real sense of like why they're there and their contributions.
yes,
because no one is entitled to that.
right.
What someone brings to the table, you might be defined by a contract or,
right.
These duties in your business or whatever. But like how you're showing up every day and the contributions you're making is such a form of ownership.
Totally.
That like, nobody else can have. So like, I think that is a manifestation that all three of us really believe in. One of my co-founders is a military veteran as well. So she's just like a bad.
Yeah.
And then she's in private equity. So she's got this amazing skill set. And then I've got a mother of three with three kids under 6.5.
Oh my God.
But she is like a sales force and like can just get into any room and light it up and know exactly
so good
how to, just create this amazing experience. And so like I have these women I get to brag about every day that are helping me, we're building this business together. And it's she is Cheval, but for them, she is Cheval might mean something a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I love that. Just the idea of like a real team effort.
Yeah.
That's kind of how we're carrying it moving forward. So like you said, it takes a village.
It does take a village. It takes like a good, if you're dating, it's the good partner. Because otherwise, if you're trying to build a company and you don't have a great partner, it's like, I'd rather be single. So either you got to be like support or we're out. No, I'm just kidding. Not really kidding though.
No. And like, that's who you're spending most of your time with, that's a big factor. And then I would also say mentors are huge.
Yes.
And I've had the privilege of having few in particular this past few years that have changed my life. They've enriched so much and they've helped me really think a different way about my situation. And like, I encourage, if there is somebody out there that inspires you, to try to get to them, and try to build a little bit of a relationship there, because most people want to see you succeed.
They do,
and find those people that want to see you like, go for it.
Such good advice. I believe in abundance and just raising each other up. And that's really why I have this show. Cause I want to hear stories and hear about companies and businesses and triumphs and setbacks and all those things. And together we're so much better. And people that do great work, they want to lift other people up. And I find the same thing if you ask, like, hey, do you want to do an event together? Do you want to do a show together? Do you want to collab? Most of the time, they're like, yeah, what do you have in mind?
Yes.
So it's just the power of the ask.
Totally.
I'm so glad that we asked you to be here. And I feel like I found a new friend and someone that I'm so looking forward to watching continue grow. And I'm here to support you. And I cannot wait to wear your shoes.
I know. Let's go pick your favorite.
let's go pick the fave. And just thank you for being you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you.
And we're here for you all the way.
Support and love.
Yes.
And constant It Factor inspiration. You're really truly incredible
Thank
to
you.
watch. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're living it, girl.
Thank you.
Got your it. So thank you.